Hello and welcome to Reuzel Live. Today is March 25th. My name is Nicholas Giberson. Back behind the captain's seat this week. Thanks to Stephanie Buckley for hosting it last week while I was out in the field. Today we have an amazing educator, one of my favorites, all the way out of Burbank, California. Everybody give it up for Katy Dickson. Katy, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, thanks so much for having me today, guys. I'm looking forward to showing you guys some techniques on how to do pompadours on really cowlicky hair. So, I feel like a question I get a lot, especially when you were bringing in models, is, well, this guy has perfect hair. Like, how am I supposed to deal with when we have like multiple cowlicks in the back or maybe a cowlick on the side? So I brought my friend here, Frankie, who has wonderfully thick hair, but also has multiple cowlicks in not so great places. So his real problematic cowlick is right here on the left side of his head, right in our transition area. So I'm going to be showing you guys today how we still use the Reuzel cutting method to combat these cowlicks, use these cowlicks, and still get a great style at the end. So that was my dry assessment of his hair. And now I'm just going in and wetting everything down. I want to make sure I have really good control, especially when we're dealing with cowlicks. Saturation of the hair is super important, but making sure that the even saturation throughout and stays saturated, especially when you have thicker hair types, the type that have a really thick cuticle layer where the water just seems to like off of a duck's butt just goes right off. So I'm going in, really saturating them down. And I have some of my hair tonic in my water bottle. That's the Reuzel Hair Tonic, the blue one. That helps break down any hat hair, any helmet hair that might be there. Also gives me some control too, that sort of elevates it past water. And then it also creates a nice client experience as well because we're engulfing them in this fresh barber scent. So I'm just combing everything back and I'm going to go in and start my primary parting. So I'm going to go right up here. I'm going to keep my finger locked. I'm just going to comb down, comb this all up and away. And we're going to be slightly dipping down for this first part of our horseshoe. And now, especially with very straight or cowlick filled hair, I'm going to definitely be using a clip or two to be controlling these. When I have longer hair or even finer hair, I might get away with not using clips, but I really want to make sure that nothing gets muddied while I'm working underneath. So I've showed you guys the good side, the easy side. Now we're going to come around his not so easy side, which we can see we have hair that if we were to comb it where it wants to go, every which way, like a flower. But we're still going to be combing this back. And this specifically is for a pompadour and for a client that does wear product. Frankie blow dries his hair. He also wears pomade. And that's how he wants to style his hair on a daily basis. Right? Sometimes I'll leave my comb in there when I'm going in for the clips, just to keep that line. Keeping my thumb, my comb. All right, and now we're in the back. Now I'm finishing up his horseshoe right at the flat of the head. And this is where sectioning gets tricky and takes a little bit of extra time, especially when you have a cowlick that wants to jump out of your hand. But just taking these extra steps and a little extra effort. And we're setting ourselves up for success. So now I'm going to go in, establish the baseline, and then I'm going to be working with clipper over comb with a little bit of clipper with guard work just to clean him up and then taper out his neckline. So I'm going in, I'm sort of fluffing everything up so that the section is being held with light tension, medium tension off of that baseline. So I'm floating everything in that comb. I start behind the ear, I go up to the hairline, and then I make my way back to the crown. And my comb angle is slightly dipping, just like my section. I'm going to go just under where I made that first cut. I see my floating guide of the baseline, cut right underneath, float again, right by the front hairline. And we already see that debulking happening. And then when I get to the back of the head, I'm going to be defining this baseline just about down to here, because then I'm going to go in and because I want a real tight taper around his nape area in zone 1, I'm going to go in. I don't need to float it down from the guide because I'm just going to be taking this off and using his head shape. Show you what I mean. So now that I have this defined, I'm just going to go from the bottom and float my way up. Just really knock that bulk off of the bottom because it's going to end up being tapered off anyway.
Hey, Katie.
Yep.
We got a comment in reference to when you're working clipper over comb. Can you kind of break down what do you mean by floating and not anchoring when you're doing clipper over comb work?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we have the floating comb position in clipper over comb, we aren't using any point of reference for the spine of the comb. So the spine of the comb is where our cutting line always is. Some of it does get cut above that cutting line, but this is always where the cutting line is happening. So when we have anchored, that's when we're using the head as an anchor point, literally, for pivoting so we can choose our angle. Or when we're in the floating position, we are not using any anchoring, but we are still using our hands to create the angle that we want. I'm doing a floating clipper over comb position at a straight up and down 90-degree angle. When I get into these tighter areas, I'm going to be using an anchored position to get nice and tight up against there, because this wall clipper comb is a 1.5 guard. So I take that right up against the skin and I go in and make a cut right at that cut line. That's down to a 1.5, about 3.5 millimeters. So that's what I mean when I say I'm using the floating clipper over comb. So when I go in to define my baseline on the other side, floating at 90. And where my cutting line is right where that section I made is. Go up towards the hairline, and now I'm back in the crown. I know a lot of people only feel comfortable using clipper over comb when there is an anchor point because it makes them feel safer or it makes them feel like they always know where they're referencing. But if you know how to use the floating versus the anchored positions, you end up using both when you're clipper over combing. I definitely tend to use floating more because I find no matter what position you're in with the anchored, you're going to end up getting a taper, like a very quick graduation of length rather than the building of the shape. So I'm just defining that baseline. And we're looking balanced, but what I want to do right now, depending on what comb you have, you can either use the teeth or you can use some sort of marker on the spine to do a quick measurement of the baseline. Because the baseline is used to balance both the sides and back of the head and the top of the head, if we do not have a symmetrical baseline for this type of cut out of the gate, we will have an asymmetrical cut at the end. If I was doing a boogie where there was a fade involved or maybe a hard part, asymmetrical baseline is totally okay. It's an asymmetrical cut. I'm not saying asymmetrical is bad. But in this instance, I want to make sure my sides are symmetrical. So I'm going to go in, measure. I use the flat point of the head, which is right behind the ears, and then the flat point of the back, which is right under the crown. And I make sure that all of these are balanced, which they are. So now I'm going to go in. I was using my clipper comb at a horizontal. Now I'm going to go in, still using the floating, but I'm going to be doing diagonal. And I'm doing this to use the guides that I have up here and to really use the head shape to taper all of this down and to move through it quicker. Just like that. Still going in at the diagonal. Give everything a nice taper. Now I'm here, right at the sideburn, with my anchored position. Really going in and tapering that temple area and sideburn area. All right, now that I've made my basic sketch of the sides and back, I still have tapering to do, but that will all happen in the refinement. I'm going to move on to the top. Take all these clips down. Shake it out. I'm combing everything back. And the way I like to take the preliminary partings on top for my front, side, and crown sections, I'm going to start with the middle. Now again, I'm going in with a middle part. If this was an asymmetrical cut, I would be going off of that defined part line. But because we are doing a balance cut, I'm going off of the middle. And then, making this as easy as possible on myself, find the apex, Comb into the recession point. We have our front section. Go a
Hey,
little
Katie.
bit behind the apex. Yeah.
We have a question. You mentioned your model has a double crown. Do you have any advice on how to deal with them as far as like how to decide what length to cut it to, how to section it? Do you have any advice for dealing with double crowns?
Yeah, so once I was to get into the crown section, I was going to talk about that. Specifically for my client here, Frankie, having his hair on the longer side back there and having a real nice graduation that happens below. You can see here's his one cowlick. I mean, one is already crazy enough. And then we come onto the other side and we have his other one that pushes completely up against that one. This one is a little bit weaker. This one is a little bit stronger. So we see this one really wants to give me trouble. So what I like to do is I really like to make sure that I've got a good grip back here when I'm dealing with that, because I want to make sure that I'm really maintaining that weight through it, that I'm not doing any layering, that I'm really just flattening it out with my section, which then leads to that weight being built up so I know I'm not overcutting it, at least not in the beginning where I'm not refining it yet. So I want to leave as much as that in this area as possible so that it physically has the volume to lay down on itself. So I've defined the front corner crown, my first cuts, and I'm going to get more into it when I get to his crown. But when I'm starting this transition area, I always start in the same place that I started my baseline, the flat behind the ear. It's the flattest point of the head. So I'm taking a subsection. We want a subsection that reflects the section underneath. And then you see my previous shape as well. I go to the baseline right here behind the ear. And then as I'm moving towards the recession point, I will actually flare my finger angle out because I'm creating a disconnection that will end up leading to looking connected. So it's an intentional disconnection in a fully connected blended haircut. And that's more to maintain the length and weight when we're going up. Because right now we're looking at everything downward, but all of this is going to get flipped upward. So we're thinking about it in a reverse. So I'm creating a thicker square through this corner by creating that disconnection. And that will help support longer length in the front. So I took that section to the baseline, flaring my finger angle out. We see we have that angle going down. So each subsection that I take, I'm going to be combing it down to that baseline. So my baseline is a stationary guide when I'm creating the graduation through this region. I want to make sure I have a nice, very clear line that shows me that I am holding it in the position, the same elevation, and the same place that it should be. If I was to elevate a little bit and I look underneath, now my guide gets a little bit tapered. It's not so clear. That's how I can check myself and make sure that I am getting the right elevation and the right placement. This is super important when I'm dealing with graduations or when I'm dealing with anything that's floating off of the head shape and I'm creating a weight line with it. I want to make sure that I'm being precise. And that's my little trick of making sure I'm in the right place every time. So I'm just combing it down, finding that baseline. Nice thick line. Flaring my finger angle out. Now, especially when I'm doing a more exaggerated disconnection through that recession area, I tend to anchor my knuckle up against the head. And then I'm using my fingers as well, but I'm really getting a sharp angle with the anchoring of the top of my hand. And now I'm going to move back into the crown. Making sure that the saturation is still there. Especially now that I'm dealing with the cowlick. So I'm going to go in following that same baseline subsection right above it. So now we're parting right through the center of that cowlick. So I'm still combing downward. Got a nice grip on it. Find the guide underneath. And now, depending on the client, I may end up going in and adjusting my graduation a little bit. Maybe even pulling out a vertical section if I see that the shape and the cowlick will actually like support it. So right now, because the hair is wet and I can't see in its entirety what this cowlick does, that is why I am trying to maintain all this weight.
Hey, Katie, we got another question.
Yep.
I'm loving this engagement. So if you're watching us, keep on asking questions. It makes it fun for everybody. The question is, at this point, can you point cut to add more texture when you're connecting your sections to your baseline?
So yes, that is what you can absolutely do, where you could hold the section and I could go in vertical, maybe at a little angle, and just start doing it that way. The only reason I'm not doing that is because I want to show you guys its shape and how it comes out with a very sharp cut to it. But if you know, like how this client is, you know you have a thick hair client going on, you definitely want to start adding the texture from the beginning. Do you want to do that with every client, especially new guests, maybe ones you haven't seen before, or ones with finer hair that maybe, think they want texture and then it thins them out too much? I would say you would want to reserve this technique of point cutting from the jump with thicker hair types. But absolutely, you can start that point cutting in this portion of the haircut. So we already see we got our shape building up. And we can see there's that cowlick going on. When I comb everything back, we have a nice shape that's laying. And I know that I didn't cut anything to where it's going to spring up. So now I'm going to go in to my front, comb this back, and then I'm going to be taking on this side horizontal to the hairline subsections. And that's what makes the most sense to me to explain horizontal to the hairline, because it's a diagonal back section that sort of you end up over directing hair from over here, and I just prefer to say horizontal to the hairline, but it technically is a diagonal back section. Let me show you what I mean. I found the horizontal to the hairline description the most easy to understand when I was learning this technique from our Scumbassador George, who's a fantastic hair cutter and educator. And that's what's made the most sense to me. So yes, diagonal, but horizontal to the hairline. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take that section. I'm going to be doing a little bit of over directing from that center. Because I have that strong angle, I have my wrist and the top of my hand anchored up against the flat point of his head. I see my guide from my previous disconnection. And I'm creating that corner. Take another section. Do the same, my anchoring point. And now you see I'm floating. And we're creating that corner. All right, so on to the left side now. Here we have another hairline cowlick that I would say, just as somebody who's been cutting his hair for a long time, always throws me for a loop. If I haven't seen him for a few months, I know during the pandemic we didn't see each other for a couple years. This never fails to make me feel insecure about my cutting abilities. And I do a great haircut on him every time, but every time it looks at me and it taunts me. So making sure that it's highly saturated and I can't see its evil taunting shape, making me feel insecure, then I'll go in and start my preliminary partings.
Hey, Katie, we got another question
Yep.
while you're sectioning that out, if you want to explain while you're doing that. The question is, how long have you been cutting hair and how long did it take you to begin feeling comfortable behind the chair?
I've been cutting hair for about 11 years, and professionally, I've been cutting my family's hair for a very, very long time. And how long did it take me to feel comfortable? That is such a deep question when I know it totally isn't. Um, I think there's points in everyone's career where they feel like they've sort of climbed the mountain and they've gotten over that peak of, I can work dialed in and I can be consistent on my timing and I can be consistent with my haircuts. And then something will maybe throw you off or you'll learn a new technique. I know that I definitely felt like I knew nothing once I came to Reuzel, which I thought was really interesting because I felt very confident in my ability to explain and my ability to cut and how I knew hair worked and how I knew shapes worked. I had studied Vidal Sassoon hair cutting methods. And after leaving the first training, I remember thinking, I don't know anything. But that's not true. So I think it takes a very long time to get to a point where you feel truly confident. But if you start with good haircutting techniques out of the gate in your career and you build upon those, it doesn't take very long to get confident. Pushing yourself to learn. I mean, what you guys are doing here today by watching me, whether it's on a replay or it's live, you're pushing yourself to be more confident and to feel more secure in your abilities and what you're doing. And I think there's not really a tangible point where you get to that until you feel it for yourself. and you end a day's work and you think back to the haircuts you did that day, and you think back to the way you made people feel, and how how much money you made for yourself, and you'll have days like that. And that, that's, I think that's when when you leave the day feeling really good about everything you did, because we're in a business of performance as well, and consistency. People don't come back to you every single time because they think they're going to get a different haircut. They come back to you because they want the same thing, or they want the same service, the same experience. And getting consistent with that is what really elevated my confidence in myself. So that was my deep, long answer. I liked that question. Thank you to whoever asked that.
No, that's
Sorry if
perfect.
it was.
Perfect answer, Katy. Perfect answer.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry
if it got a little deep.
No, you're good. I've been doing this for, I'd say, 11 years now, and I still feel like I don't know anything. Just want to let you know, we've got viewers from the US, Canada, Poland, Guatemala, Mexico, Vietnam, and Peru. So lots of worldwide people watching today.
That is so awesome, guys. So I'm just finishing up this baseline, or getting everything to the baseline. I mean, look, how can you not feel no confidence in this little transition right here? It's sticking up, it's being crazy, but I promise it's all going to be all right. I know at this point a lot of us feel like we should just cut this off. It's not going to work. It's too straight. There's too many cowlicks. But we're going to keep rolling with our system. Trust the system. That was something that I did implement early in my career, which is what I really love about the Reuzel routine and the Reuzel haircutting method, is that everything is a routine. Everything is, replicatable on everybody's hair. And you can use different techniques. But I love the consistency, and my clients really appreciate the consistency as well. And consistency is what helped build my brand personally. All right. Now we've got most of the top cut. It's done. We did all of that with the transition. It's already looking like he's got, see, look, it's like your head got like 2 times smaller.
Pretty much.
So because I want to keep that weight in his parietal ridge, where that baseline is, where I built up that graduation, all I'm going to be doing is taking a section at his apex, and that's my layers on top. And in other instances, I would go in and use that center as a guide and take small subsections and connect that if I wanted to reduce that weight. But I really want to keep the weight because I want that to support a nice high shape when we go in and blow dry. Pull this up. Pull this back up as well.
Hey, Katy, we got more questions. Which I actually love it today. It's great to see all the engagement and interaction.
I love all this engagement. I feel like sometimes we're like, do you have any questions? And it's just crickets. I love this.
Just crickets. We got a question. It is from Jake Wilkes, watching on YouTube. Any tips for a barber who wants to do more classic cuts? How would you go about getting more clientele that want that sort of haircut through the door? Any advice?
Absolutely. So that was also my problem too. Like I had built up such a clientele of like skin fade, razor fade, like short haircut, military, high and tight, like, and I really wanted to work more on longer hair. And the thing that I did was I basically only took photos of my longer hair clients. I stopped taking photos of fades. I stopped posting the fades on Instagram. They're still there. You got to scroll down a little bit, and they're years old now, but I primarily focused on that so that people especially men who have longer hair, they are constantly in search of somebody who is not going to like scalp them on the sides. I had a client who moved down to near a military base here in California and was so afraid of going to a barber down there because he was so sure that they were going to cut off his like surfer, like wavy locks. So he would drive 2.5, 3 hours to see me because that's what I focused on. That was the advertising that I put out there. That's the best way. And it's slow at first, and then it'll feel like a boom of people. I posted that I did perms, and now I'm doing a perm once a week. So people, especially in longer haired men's market or a little bit of niche, like nicher markets, like classic hairstyling, if you put that out and advertise that and say, I am a specialist in this. This is what, look at what I did. People are going to feel comfortable and go, oh, he doesn't just say he knows how to do a pompadour or an executive contour or the Ivy League. Like you are about it and you have the photo evidence to prove it. That's what I found is the best. And trust me, I'm not good at Instagram marketing, but that does work. Put out into the world what you want to get back. Also approaching people that have that hair. I no shamely approached this young man in a Trader Joe's and told him, like, you have a perfect pompadour. I would love to cut your hair. And he said no. So there's no harm in asking. He only said no because he was very loyal to his barber, who I also know to be a great barber here in the North Hollywood, Burbank area. So now that I'm done with the sketch of both the sides and the top, I'm going in and I'm loading the hair up sides and back with spray grooming tonic. The reason I'm not just grabbing for my grooming tonic in the dropper bottle is because I really want to go in and make sure that I'm getting everything through the sides and back. And I just feel like I can do that a little better with the atomizer. Because it's lighter, I have to use a little bit more. So this is just my personal preference for the application for him, but I have to use more. So now I'm going to get started with a vent brush. I'm going to be using just a wider vent brush, and then I'm going to be refining the front pompadour with a Denman brush, one of these hemisphere brushes. This works much better for pompadours than a round brush does. I'm not saying round brushes don't work. I like the results with these better. And I have done a couple of these once or twice, both with a round brush and with the Denman hemisphere brush. I'm going to go in medium to low speed, depending on your blow dryer, and medium to high-ish heat, depending on your blow dryer. This is on the high setting. It's really more of a medium setting. So I'm going to get started. Sides and back of his head. I'm just pushing everything back. I'm kind of working that corner already up. I'm making sure not to keep the blow dryer anywhere too long. Some people just keep it and then do this. I like to keep it moving. I like to use higher heat to move through coarser hair faster and dry it faster. So keeping your blow dryer moving keeps their scalp from being burnt. Oh my gosh. All right. Now this is the side with all the trouble, but I start running the blow dryer through it, start giving it that lift. We really end up harnessing the cowlick in this corner to give a really nice foundation for the lift. I'm just wrapping everything back. And it's playing nice with us already, and we haven't even slammed pomade into it yet. And now I'm just going through the top of the head. I'm starting at the crown because then I'm putting my section onto dry hair, and I'm never rehydrating. I am just working efficiently. I'm just sort of crossing back and forth, going over these cowlicks, smoothing them back. I'm kind of brushing upward through this transition region. Because I'm building a pompadour, I don't necessarily want to seal him down too much and have everything going downward. I want there to be a lot of lift and a lot of volume. We want to make his fenders pop. That's what we want to see. I'm going to switch hands on this other side. Once I get it about 80% dry, that's when I'm going to move in. I'm going to comb downward and then brushing the opposite way towards the hairline, scoop and flip. Scoop and flip. I'm feeling for any immediate coldness that happens. That means it's still damp. Move that section behind, scoop and flip. And now I'm sort of pulling it in the opposite direction of which it's going to be styled. And that's going to ensure maximum volume through this front. Bring it into the other side. Brush everything down. Scoop and flip. We got that pompadour pumping. Now I'm checking for any coldness. I am loving this already. And now we're going to jump into the refinement. We're going to give them lots of texture, soften up these lines, and taper everything out of the bottom. I'm gonna go in. And I'm just carving out this zone 1 with a 2 guard. As much as I would love to leave the hair a little more natural, his hair grows way too fast for that, and we gotta taper it down. We have done longer trims on Frankie here before, but I find that it just gets so bulky for him around the ears that us bringing in that tightness in zone one is just better for his longevity. He does good with the long trim though. He's good at styling it, good at styling the long. I think that's a good conversation to have with your clients who are thinking about possibly going to a longer style is, are you going to have the time to maintain that routine? Are you going to be able to handle the new hair? More shampoo, more time? Go in, soften out any little weight line. Want to make sure not to be cutting off all the hard work we did under that baseline. Just finishing off the taper.
Hey, Katie, I asked our viewers what products they wanted to see you style with.
Pink.
And we got
right?
lots of suggestions. Of course, they always want the greases. We know they love the greases. We got concrete and green. We got fiber gel. We got blue and pink.
Ooh, concrete and green. Definitely concrete and green. I love that combo together. Love that cocktail. All righty. I'm just going to do a little bit of quick texturizing and softening through these edges. And I'm just going in the same way, but I'm just using my blending shears right at the very tips of the hair of the section that I'm pulling. I'm not going in real deep and trying to create a bunch of very different lengths going on. I'm just trying to soften some visual weight lines that I see. Because we want the weight line, we don't want the weight. I didn't mean to make fun of the people that want to see pink. He's a great candidate for pink. He just wouldn't want to have to then remove it. He doesn't have his degreasing formula at home, which is the daily shampoo, daily conditioner, and scrub shampoo used a certain way, where we go in conditioner first to get the grease out, and then shampoo. So the thing I love about that cocktail of the green and the concrete together, because the concrete is a hybrid product, it is beeswax based, but it's water soluble. So when you put in our grease base, you're not putting in a product that then is going to be non-water soluble. I'm using about 2 knuckles of concrete and 1 knuckle of green. Now, concrete always does this. You know you've gotten good emulsion on your hands when it looks like you've just touched wet paint.
Hey, Katie, we had a question about the degreasing.
Oh, yeah.
When degreasing, do you follow up the shampoo with a second conditioning?
Yes, but that's not necessarily part of our degreasing formula, but I usually will. So because you're using really strong degreasing shampoo in the scrub shampoo, I like to finish that off, even though the daily shampoo is much more gentle. I like to finish it off with another round of our daily conditioner. So that would be daily conditioner, scrub shampoo, daily shampoo, and then daily conditioner. So what I'm doing, I'm starting in the back and I'm working my way up to the front, but I'm focusing my application on the sides and on the internal part of his hair. So I'm just kind of shimmying back and forth. I just love this combo. It almost feels like a way to sort of cheat yourself into a pink grease look without the pink grease, then aftercare, I guess as you could call it. Because the green brings out the shine in concrete, but you still get this great, super strong gravity defying hold, even with the green diluting it slightly. All right. Now that I see his hair with a little pomade in, a little, about 2.5 knuckles worth, really. I'm going to do a little more cutting action, and then I'm going to take care of all the boring bits of the tapering of the neckline, a little bit of line work, none of the fun stuff. I really hope you guys maybe got something new or were reinforced some basic tenets that you already knew. I feel so grateful for everyone's questions today. This was probably the most fun I've had during a live with all of your guys' questions. So seriously, thank you so much.
There have been a ton more questions, but I'm going to leave them so you can answer them on Facebook later.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll hop on right after this and I'll get through all your guys' questions. Now I know lining up isn't really that interesting, but when you're dealing with longer hair lengths, I always love to use the comb to manipulate the hair and to move it in different directions so I can get more control over it. And also so I'm not guessing where the natural line is. Because I don't want to create white walls, which is a reference to white wall tires, which I don't know if that's even a relevant reference anymore since we're not in the 50s. We don't want to be overcutting the line if we aren't requested to. I'm just going to go in, do a little skin taper back here, get all of this just smoothed out. And then what I'm going to be doing at the end, which you guys won't see because it'll be off camera, I am going to be doing a hot towel shave at the very end to clean everything up. And I really love using a little spritz of the hair tonic when I make my hot towels, and my clients really appreciate it too. Not that laundry detergent isn't a fantastic smell to have over your face and in your nose, but hair tonic really does make for a nicer experience. All right, triple. All right, I'm going to clean up the rest of that in the shade. What? Here he is.
It looks great, Katy. Any final remarks?
Keep doing education if you don't feel confident. We have so much here available at Reuzel, both in person and online. And the best thing I ever did for my career was take education, watch videos, ask people questions like you guys did today. So keep on keeping on. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katy. And thank you to all the viewers today for hanging out with us for Reuzel Live. Just a couple of notes before we get out of here. Our next upcoming and in-person events we've got going on. We've got a modern classics cutting class in Denver next weekend, April 7th and 8th. I believe there may still be some time to sign up for that. We have our next Reuzel Live presentation with International Scumbassador Romeo Batres from Guatemala. He will be spreading the greasy gospel in English this time. He's one of our bilingual educators. And lastly, April 29th in Miami Beach, Robin Lane will be at the Behind the Chair show. We need models. If you are interested in being a model for the hair show, if your hair is between 1 to 3 inches of length on the sides, 3 to 5 inches of length on the top, feel free to shoot me an email at nicholas@reuzel.com, or you can slide into my DMs at nicholasxfury on Instagram. We're looking for models, and we will see you at any of those dates I just mentioned. Thanks for hanging out with us again today. Thanks, Katy. Great job. And we'll see you all next time.